Hey everyone, Jedi Mike here, and I'm back with another video. Today I'm doing a review, non-spoiler review of Supergirl. This is the new film in the DC universe starring Millie Alcock as Supergirl with supporting characters such as Jason Momoa as Lobo. We have Eve Ridley as Ruthie, and we have David Corenswet returning as Superman. This film is directed by Craig Gillespie and screenplay by Nogueira. And this could be my non-spoiler review. This film will be coming out on June 26th. Now, this film is loosely based off of the Woman of Tomorrow storyline in the comics. And if you know the comic book, you understand that this comic book is very vast and very deals with Kara Zor-El in terms of her origin, but also in terms of her traumas that she's going through as she's going through her birthday. And she comes across Ruthie, who is a young girl who is seeking for help after Krem of the Yellow Hills, who's the villain of this movie, has murdered her innocent family, and she's seeking help from Kara Zor-El to help her and avenge her family's death and everything, while also Kara is also learning her past traumas, learning how to deal with that as well. And in this film is loosely based off that, but only scratches the surface. I was very excited for this film, just knowing, being a fan of Supergirl, being a fan of Superman, the last film with David Corenswet. And there's a lot of things in this film I was looking forward to, not just because of the story that was based off of Woman of Tomorrow, but also of Millie Alcock. She was amazing in House of Dragons as Rhaenyra Targaryen, the younger version. And also we have Jason Momoa back in a DC movie, but not as Aquaman, but as Lobo. Was a long-awaited journey to get to this point, and I'm happy that we finally get to see him play this character that he was born to play. But unfortunately, much as I enjoy the cast of this movie and their portrayal of these characters, I felt this movie was very disjointed in terms of its pacing, but more importantly how it was structured. Again, this is not a horrible film, but I think the most frustrating thing about this is that this film could have been a lot better, and more of it really has to do with the script. Again, as I mentioned about the Woman of Tomorrow storyline that this film is based off of, this graphic novel, is that yes, there's such things as comic book adaptations, but when the marketing of this movie and how this movie was pitched and sold to us, because originally this movie was supposed to call Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, but with this, what you get is more of a scratching the surface of what the story actually entails, and really you get a lot of this more grounded but grittier and type of like punk rock side of like the ghetto of the space of the DC universe, right? And it's unfortunate because I feel like this movie could have been a lot more hopeful and not necessarily traumatic, not diving into terms of emotional themes, and definitely dive into that. But what this film was lacking was really a consistent structure that added into the momentum of what was actually going on in this movie, and allowing certain scenes to actually breathe, where we felt like we're kind of cutting to set piece after set piece, and instead of actually moving every plot point into a cohesive storyline. And that's, to me, what I feel very frustrated with this movie about. But aside from that, Millie, I think she did a great job in terms of balancing that more jaded version of Kara. Now, I wasn't just a DC fan of Turn from yesterday. If you are a fan of Supergirl, you've seen her different versions of her, both live action and animated, in both movie and television. And so, but this is a much more darker, jaded version of her. But Millie Alcock plays that, and not in a way of someone that you don't want to be around, but someone you just understand what they have gone through, and you understand and when they make certain choices of where they came from, in terms of not only just in terms of their trauma, but the burden that they're carrying on themselves, in terms of how to mask their pain, right? And in this movie, that she is actually 23 years old, and but again, she remembers, in terms of the devastation, what happened with her civilization, what happened with Krypton, her city that broken off, and now her mother and father also sending her away to Earth, so she can be with her cousin, Clark, Kal-El. And when we see David Corenswet return in this movie, I felt that they did a really good job of having great chemistry with David Corenswet and Millie Alcock for the very short scenes they are on screen together. And we know that she's going to make an upcoming appearance in Man Tomorrow, which is coming out next year and which is currently shooting now. But I really enjoyed for the sprinkle of David Corenswet Superman in this, because it balances each other out. It balances Superman and Supergirl in terms of having very cohesive synergy on screen, and every time they're on screen together, you just you're drawn to it, because again, if you're just a fan of these characters and what they were in the comics, it just, you like seeing these characters be just normal people, but again, they're family members or cousins, and you see that little like banter back and forth with them. And I just wish we got more of that, but I know we're going to get more of that very, very soon. But going into with this movie, we have Ruthie here, played by Eve Ridley, and she did a really good job at this. If you understand the character Ruthie from the Woman Tomorrow storyline, I thought she played that character very well, for what it's worth. And I think she had really good banter with Millie Alcock in terms of their chemistry in there. But I felt with some, again, to my point of how this movie was structured, that it did kind of leave certain scenes where it felt we can really enjoy their chemistry full on through, but really we're just kind of learning their relationship through situations and actually kind of going from one scene to another and not actually letting scenes breathe. And it's unfortunate, because I do believe, again, the cast of this is phenomenal. But I really wish, in terms of how this movie was structured, that it paid off the performances that they were given in this movie. The performances they gave in this movie didn't deserve how this film was edited. And you're going to see a lot of people's reviews about this, and they're probably going to go ham on this and stuff. And I think that none of it had really to do about Millie Alcock's performance in this movie, but really just in terms of the story and how the story is told to you, the audience viewer, of the origin story of from Krypton now to, I believe, Andor, in terms of her city broken off from Krypton, and her being shipped off to Earth to meet up with Superman, and also how she gets to this point where she's just out in space on planets with red suns, celebrating her 23rd birthday. And the whole course of this movie is in the span of 3 days, where Krypto gets injured by Krem from the Yellow Hills, and she has to find the antidote, so we're able to save him. And yes, and you're seeing this dynamic between Kara and Ruthie, where she's not trying to let Ruthie, even though she's come from tragedy, similar to Kara, but she just don't want to basically have her carry a burden where she's going to regret, where if she actually wants to kill this person and seek revenge, and how that's going to be on her conscience moving forward, right? And she's more battling and wrestling with what type of hero that she wants to be, and really does she want to be involved in this whatsoever. She just want to save her dog, but then at the same time, there's some things where she is stepping in to help because it's just the right thing to do. But you do see that balance of how she is different from Superman. And I think, again, the casting of Millie Alcock was great to add that. And Jason Momoa, again, Jason Momoa is not in this movie as much, but as you understand the character Lobo, him being a bounty hunter, I think he played in a way where he wasn't tagging along with the team because, he's just an additional hero for the sake of the story. Like, no, he's around because he is still trying to collect a bounty, and decisions that he's making, he's an anti-hero. He could be a villain, for other future projects and stuff, especially when it comes to like animation and etc. But they did a really good job of just trying to give you that sense of taste of Jason Momoa's Lobo, but I felt they were holding him back a little bit. There's an argument to be made that he really didn't need to be in this movie, and I feel like it was more kind of fan service for the sake of just kind of pleasing a male audience and not actually giving a full-fledged out story with Supergirl and Ruthie and them, and allowing that storyline to just fall through. But not to say that Jason Momoa was a negative of this movie. I just really wanted more of him, and I felt we only got a taste of him in this. But every time he's on screen is magnetic, and you're drawn, just laughing, just looking at him, and just having a good time, because we're having a good time just watching him play this character. Krem of the Yellow Hills. The best way I can put it is, I think from the version that you have in this movie compared to the comic book, that this is probably the most generic villain you probably can see in a superhero film. This is going back to old school MCU C-level villain like Dark Elves or Whiplash, and just insert any villain that's forgettable in the early stage Marvel. and that's probably what you get. Not probably what you will get when you watch this movie. And Krem of the Yellow Hills basically just really more used as a plot device instead of actually a galactic presence. And overly stylized. I did not like the design of this character. It just was unnecessary. Didn't need to be overly stylized to where he looked like almost Razor Face or something from Guardians of the Galaxy. But speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, one of my biggest issues in this movie, again, aside from like there are great visuals when it comes to Kara's, powers, and even in space when we see, but a lot of the extraterrestrial planets, it lacks imagination, where we go to different planets and spoiler, and we see just terms of different ecosystems, but some of them really arguably could be the same landscape, just different skin or different lighting. You know what I mean? And I felt that was so disappointing, just because as a fan of science fiction, a fan of space exploration and stuff, but knowing the Woman Tomorrow storyline, the comics, like it was very colorful and vibrant, and I felt that this film, at least with characters, felt a little more like grittier, muddier, and not saying nothing wrong with that, but definitely when you see hearing things about Mad Max vibes of it, you get that in this movie, and really nothing more. But aside from that, do I find this parts of this movie was entertaining? Yes. You do get needle drop music in there in the sense of action pieces, but it is stereotypical in terms of what you probably seen before. But it was great just seeing this version of Supergirl play out those scenes and stuff. So I did have a good time watching that. But and I won't say anything more other than, as I mentioned, about David Corenswet is only in this movie briefly, but the last 5 minutes of this movie to me what kind of signifies why I enjoy this movie for the most part, but again, it has some issues structurally. But knowing that the casting of these characters are great, and I know we'll have longevity in the future when we get better projects than this one in the DC universe, is that between Millie Alcock and David Corenswet in a scene, and there's no action scene or anything, just these characters being who they are in costume, and I was getting teared up a little bit, only because of who these characters are, but also just how human they are in that scene, and just being regular people, but who they are to each other, their family members, their cousins. And to me, if like a scene is so simple, but it speaks so much volume to me, which is why I've been asking for a DC fan, and you get sprinkles of that in this movie, but not enough to I feel to be memorable. And unfortunately, but I did enjoy Superman better than this movie, but I hope that Man of Tomorrow will be better than both of these movies, both Superman and Supergirl. We got Clayface coming out end of this year, and I hope that is a better project. But unfortunately, I felt the writing of this movie fell a little bit flat, and unfortunately, the fact that this writer is also attached for the Wonder Woman project, and I believe also Teen Titans movie that's also been announced by Deadline or Variety. But aside from that, I do believe that if this film can learn from its mistakes in the future, if James can also learn about not allowing other directors do their own version or their vision of these characters, but also at the same time not feel like they're trying to do an interpretation of a James Gunn movie. That's, to me, is part of allowing the cook to cook, and you just spectating, and she's kind of giving a few notes then and there, and that's what it felt like. I feel like Craig Gillespie was trying to do a James Gunn impersonation of what he would have done for a movie of this space, and it's like space aliens in the bar, whatever like that. And I think it's unfortunate. I do believe that these characters are better than that, but hopefully we can get better versions of these characters in upcoming installments. But did I have a bad time in this movie, watching this movie? No, I didn't have a bad time, but I was a little bit frustrated because there were some things and character issues, which when you see the movie, there's some detail they changed, even though originally in the comics it was what you see in this movie. But common knowledge for DC fans and for fans of Supergirl and Superman, there's something about that character and why she is who she is and how she interacts with Superman is because it's this detail that happens in these characters' origin, and they changed that, and that kind of shits my dynamic and viewpoint of this movie. But aside from that, I want to let you guys go see it and let you guys be a judge of what you think of this film. Also, check the link in my description box below of my review on Rotten Tomatoes, also on Nerdspin. And make sure you hit subscribe button, comment, like, and share. Let me know your thoughts. And when you guys get a chance to see Supergirl on June 26th. All right, guys. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.